The studio was electric that evening, charged with the kind of restless energy that signaled something big was about to happen. Cameras glided silently across the glossy floor, audience members whispered excitedly, and the host's grin was tight with anticipation. The special broadcast had promised a conversation between generations, featuring former President Barack Obama and businesswoman Ivanka Trump. But everyone knew it was more than that. It was a showdown, an exchange between two public figures whose worldviews couldn't have been further apart. As the lights dimmed and the applause swelled, Obama walked out first, his usual cool confidence radiating through the stage. He gave a warm wave, shaking hands, his signature smile instantly grounding the audience. Then came Ivanka, polished and glowing, her calm, camera-ready demeanor in full force. She carried herself with practiced poise, the faintest hint of defiance in her eyes. The tension between respect and rivalry was almost tangible as the two took their seats under the bright studio lights. The topic: leadership in America's economic direction. The host introduced the discussion with carefully neutral language, but the undertone was clear: this was going to be a test of intellect, poise, and persuasion. Ivanka jumped in first, her tone smooth and confident, rehearsed yet earnest. She began with a critique of the Obama administration's economic policies, calling them outdated frameworks that discouraged innovation and punished small businesses. She spoke about empowering the private sector and allowing the market to lead social progress. Her words flowed elegantly, and for a moment, she seemed to have the upper hand. The audience nodded, some applauding softly. Obama listened intently, his hands clasped loosely in front of him, eyes locked on Ivanka as though studying a chess opponent's next move. When she finished, he nodded once, appreciative but unconvinced. Then he leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, steady, but edged with authority. "Ivanka," he began, his tone as smooth as ever but unmistakably sharp, "I admire your optimism. I really do. But let's unpack what you mean when you say regulation stifles innovation." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the audience before returning to hers. "What you call regulation, many Americans call protection, protection from exploitation, pollution, fraud, and unfair competition. These aren't barriers to progress, they're the safety nets that make progress possible." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ivanka blinked, caught slightly off guard by the firmness in his tone. She smiled, the kind of practiced smile that masks irritation, and countered quickly. "But President Obama, too much government interference discourages ambition. People thrive when they're free to lead, not when they're told how to operate." Obama tilted his head, his lips curving into a knowing half-smile. "Leadership is important," he said, "but history tells us that trusting the powerful to regulate themselves rarely ends well for the powerless." His voice deepened slightly as he continued, his words deliberate and unhurried. "We didn't get seatbelt laws, clean air, or fair wages because the market decided it was the right thing to do. We got them because people demanded fairness, and government acted. Leadership is fine, but it's not a substitute for accountability." That's when the energy in the room shifted. The audience broke into applause, some clapping mid-sentence, while others simply stared, wide-eyed at the former president's composure. Ivanka's face tightened almost imperceptibly. She adjusted in her chair, attempting to steer the discussion back toward her talking points. "With all due respect," she said, her voice still calm but slightly brittle, "I believe innovation flourishes when people aren't bogged down by too many restrictions." Obama's smile widened, not smug, but certain. "And I believe innovation without responsibility leads to disaster," he replied smoothly. "We've seen what happens when companies are allowed to cut corners in the name of profit. We've seen what happens when short-term gain outweighs long-term consequence. You can't call it freedom if it only benefits the few." The crowd erupted again, louder this time, some even standing to applaud. Ivanka tried to interject, but the noise drowned her out. For a split second, she looked genuinely unsettled, caught between maintaining composure and defending her ground. Obama leaned back, hands folded, his gaze steady but not unkind. "We can't confuse privilege with wisdom," he added softly, and the words landed like a quiet thunderclap. The camera zoomed in, catching the subtle shift in her expression, the fleeting flash of discomfort behind her eyes. Her well-prepared notes suddenly felt irrelevant, her next line hanging in her throat. The moderators exchanged quick glances, sensing the power imbalance. The audience was hanging on every syllable Obama uttered. For 31 seconds, Ivanka said nothing. She looked down, exhaled, and tried to smile, but the confidence that had carried her through the opening minutes was visibly gone. It wasn't that she didn't have more to say, it was that Obama had already said everything that mattered. The crowd felt it, the camera caught it, and when the host finally stepped in to move to the next topic, everyone in the room knew they had just witnessed something rare, the precise moment when confidence collided with clarity, and crumbled. The fallout from that live exchange was nothing short of explosive. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, clips of Barack Obama dismantling Ivanka Trump's argument flooded social media platforms. The moment, the precise 31 seconds in which Ivanka's composure visibly cracked, became the internet's new obsession. Hashtags like #Obama31seconds, #IvankaCrumble, and #presidential precision began trending across X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Memes appeared almost instantly, contrasting Obama's calm confidence with Ivanka's stunned silence. News outlets scrambled to post analyses, headlines blaring, "Obama silences Ivanka on live TV, the masterclass in debate America didn't expect," and "How 31 seconds changed everything." Inside the network's control room, producers could hardly believe what they'd just witnessed. The ratings were already breaking projections, and executives buzzed with excitement, predicting the replay would become one of the most viewed political exchanges of the decade. Yet, behind the scenes, Ivanka wasn't celebrating. Crew members later whispered that she had stayed seated long after the cameras stopped rolling, staring blankly at her note cards. Her assistant tried to console her, but she reportedly said, "He didn't even raise his voice, and I still lost." Those words spread quietly among staff, painting a picture of a woman grappling with the sting of intellectual defeat. Meanwhile, Obama was unbothered. He thanked the moderators, shook hands with the production team, and walked off stage smiling, his demeanor as relaxed as ever. A witness described him as composed, gracious, and quietly amused. To him, it wasn't about victory, it was about clarity. He hadn't gone on the show to embarrass anyone. He'd simply told the truth, and the truth had done the rest. By the next morning, every major morning show was replaying the clip. Pundits couldn't get enough of the exchange. On Good Morning America, one commentator said, "Obama reminded everyone why rhetoric and reason still matter in public discourse." Another added, "Ivanka wasn't unprepared, she just met someone whose intellect and calm delivery can turn any argument inside out." Even usually conservative-leaning outlets admitted, albeit reluctantly, that Obama's poise was unmatched. Ivanka's team went into full damage control mode. They released a carefully worded statement calling the conversation a respectful and lively debate between two leaders with differing visions. But the public wasn't buying it. The internet had already made up its mind. A clip of Obama's line, "We can't confuse privilege with wisdom," circulated endlessly, becoming both a quote and a cultural jab. Late-night hosts picked up on it too. One joked, "Ivanka brought talking points, Obama brought facts." Another quipped, "She lasted longer than most, but only just." Privately, Ivanka felt humiliated. Reports later surfaced that she canceled several media appearances in the days that followed. Insiders said she was furious at how her team had briefed her, claiming they hadn't prepared her for Obama's sharp command of economic policy and historical context. "He makes everything sound like common sense," she reportedly told an aide. "You can't win against that." Obama, on the other hand, carried on with his usual grace. A few days later, during a speaking engagement at a university in Chicago, a student brought up the viral moment. Obama chuckled, clearly aware of how big the story had become. "You know," he said, his trademark smile returning, "sometimes, you don't need to shout to be heard. Facts have a way of speaking for themselves." The audience erupted in laughter and applause, their admiration filling the hall. Someone shouted, 31 seconds. And Obama just laughed, shaking his head. "That's all it takes when you're dealing with the truth," he replied. The exchange soon became the subject of think pieces and podcasts. Analysts described it as a study in composure under pressure, a generational clash between substance and style, and a perfect illustration of how experience outweighs presentation. The academic world even took note. Communication professors dissected the clip in classrooms, explaining how Obama used measured tone, precise logic, and controlled silence to command the room. Ivanka eventually reappeared in public, carefully avoiding any mention of the debate. Her next interviews were softer, focusing on family and philanthropy rather than politics. Still, the shadow of that night followed her. Every time she spoke about leadership or innovation, someone in the audience, or online, would reference the 31-second crumble. It became an unshakable part of her media image, a moment that reminded everyone that confidence without depth can only go so far. As for Obama, his reputation as a master communicator only deepened. Commentators noted that, once again, he had demonstrated the rare ability to dismantle opposition without hostility, to destroy an argument without demeaning a person. That balance, they said, was what made him formidable. He didn't win with arrogance, he won with articulation, empathy, and truth. In the end, the world remembered that night not as a debate between a former president and a business heiress, but as a lesson in the enduring power of intellect. Barack Obama didn't need to shout, boast, or belittle. He simply spoke from experience, from conviction, and in doing so, he reminded everyone watching that when authenticity meets intelligence, even the most polished arguments can crumble in seconds. 31, to be exact.